To work the twisted Tunisian simple stitch, I recommend a non-fluffy yarn and a hook that's a couple of sizes bigger than you would normally use for the yarn. Normally you'd use a Tunisian hook with a wire attached, but as I'm only making a small piece today, I'm not attaching the wire. Hold your yarn in your usual manner to tension. Make a slip knot. And make as many foundation chain as your pattern indicates. This stitch can be worked over any number of chain. When you've got the number of chain that you want, we're going to work into each chain, picking up a loop. I like to work into the back bump of my chains, but that's not necessary. If you prefer to work into some other part of the chain, you can do that. The reason I like to work into the back bump is so that the top end of my work, where I finish off, and the bottom end of my work will be fairly symmetrical. So I'm going to slide the hook into each chain and pull up a loop from the tensioned yarn. Slide it through, yarn round hook, and pull the loop through the chain. Keep your tension loose and comfortable. When you're trying a new stitch, it's very easy to pull tight, and that will make it more difficult to work into. So you can see the first row is similar to the Tunisian simple stitch. We're going to work our return pass in the standard manner for a Tunisian crochet return pass. So we'll wrap our yarn around our hook once, and we're going to pull once through the first loop on the hook, wrap our yarn around the hook, and pull it through the next two. And we'll do the same for the remainder. Yarn around the hook, pull through two, yarn around the hook, pull through two, all the way to the end of the piece of work. So you can see that row there is the same as the Tunisian simple stitch. It doesn't have the twist in it yet. We're going to start working the twist now. So, in order to create the twisted effect, we work in the opposite direction to the way that Tunisian crochet is normally worked. We're going to start pulling into the bar that you see there, to create each of the stitches, but instead of going through in this direction, in the direction of work, we're going to go through against the direction of work. And so as we do that, we're going to pull around, and you'll see that the bar twists. We'll put our yarn round our hook and pull through that loop, and then you'll see the twist in place there. And that's what creates the nice effect on this stitch. We'll do that again. In the opposite direction to the way you're working, place the tip of the hook into the bar, yarn around the hook, pull through, and check you have that twist. Work in the same way till the last stitch on the hook. Now you can work a twist into the last stitch on the hook, but I prefer to leave that one without the twist. I think it makes it easier for seaming later on, or for working and edging into if you want to do that. Oops. Be careful not to split the stitches there. And so on that very last stitch, I'll be working into it in the direction of work, so with the point of the hook rather than the hooked section of it. I'll be pushing that through, yarn over hook, and there I've got all my stitches on the hook. You can see they've each got a twist apart from the last one, which is a more open stitch. So I'll be working that standard return pass again, yarn around hook, pull through one stitch on the hook, and then the rest of the time I'll be pulling it through 2 stitches, yarn round hook, pull through 2, yarn round hook, pull through 2, all the way to the end of the work. And that row is repeated until you get the work the length you want. So it's a really simple pattern to remember. You won't need to carry your pattern around with you unless there are increases and decreases. You'll just be able to carry on with your work. So let's try that again. Yarn goes through the hook, the loop in the direction, against the direction of the work, and pull the yarn through the loop on the hook, through the bar, against the direction of the work, and pull the yarn through that loop. Now sometimes you might find that your loop is a little bit tight and you can't get your hook through, or maybe it starts splitting the yarn. Don't worry, just push the tip of your hook through and then you'll be able to get the hooked part of the hook through. So you can see I've got that nice stitch there and nothing's split. If you find that you're splitting the stitches quite often, double check your tension and see if you might need to go up a hook size. It could be that as you've got used to the stitch, you're working it a little bit more tightly, or because you're new to the stitch, you're working it a little bit more tightly. People's tension can change over the time, even within a project. And so you might find if you're constantly struggling to get into the stitches, and having to lift them up a little bit, you actually need to change your hook size. So I'll carry on working until I've got a little bit to show you. And remember, on the last stitch, always work through in a straight direction if you're going to be seaming the piece. It gives you a nice loop to seam into, similar to on the other side there. So these pieces will be quite easy to seam, and then a standard return pass. This stitch can look really pretty in multiple colours as the loops overlap the next row slightly. So when your piece is the length you want, you'll want to finish off the end. You'll notice that the end has quite a lot of holes in it. It doesn't look as even as the other stitches. So the normal way to finish off a piece of Tunisian crochet, where you see this effect, is to work a UK double crochet or US single crochet into each of the stitches to get rid of that gap there between each of them. So remembering that we're working the twisted Tunisian simple stitch, I'll be pulling the hook in against the direction of work to create the twist. I'll be pulling the yarn through that stitch and then through both stitches, both loops on the hook. So pull against the direction of work, yarn round hook, pull through the loop, and then pull through both loops on the hook. Continue doing that until you get to the last stitch on the hook. Oops, that stitch is split. There we go. And when you reach the last stitch on the hook, you'll be working a stitch without a twist into that one. So this is the last twisted one. So using the tip rather than the hook section of your crochet hook, push into there, yarn round hook, pull it through, and then pull through both of the loops on the hook. And you see that gets rid of the holes there, and you still maintain the nice twisted appearance in the stitch. So there's your finished piece of Tunisian crochet. The twisted simple stitch has a nice textured effect, and the other nice fact about it is that it's not a particularly twisty piece of fabric once it's created. A lot of Tunisian crochet has a tendency to curl up once it's worked, and this one is a very low curl stitch. So it's useful for using for things where you want them to lay flat, maybe a washcloth or something where the edges are not going to be sewn together, perhaps a top with splits at the sides over the hips. You won't get the curling effect once you've blocked the crochet. You can end up with a slightly larger first row on there because it hasn't got the twist in it, and once you weave in your ends, that comes back to the normal width. You can finish off simply by cutting the yarn, leaving enough to weave in, and pulling the stitch on the hook through the final stitch, and that won't come undone. Thank you for watching.